chairman of the occasion, Mr. and Mrs. C.O.J. Onyemanukwe, our spiritual father of the day here present, Right Reverend Awka, our own mentor and senior colleague in the Identity Enterprise, former Vice Chancellor of Soka, University of Nigeria, Venerable Professor Chilebume, my Lord, spiritual and temporal gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I consider it an honor to be invited here today to perform this all-important assignment, especially given the caliber of people who have come to this occasion. But I must say that I was a bit skeptical when Venerable approached me for this assignment. I was skeptical not because what he has written does not fall within my area of study. No, that's not the issue. I was skeptical not because I do not know Timothy enough to say good things about him or about his book. No, that is not the issue. Of course, I've known Timothy for a very long time. We've been friends, especially when he came to undertake some postgraduate programs with us in university. Timothy studied religion at the university like I did. And then within the broad field of religion itself, we both major in church history. But look at where the problem is. Within church history itself, we belong to two different, sometimes conflicting traditions of historiography. Timothy, for instance, originally belonged to what we call missionary historiography, where the emphasis of the historian is on the role of foreign missionaries who actually sacrifice the comfort of their homes, the comfort of their countries, the comfort of their family circle and friends to come to us in Africa so that the citadel of devil can be defeated and the light of the gospel to shine upon us. On the other hand, I belong to nationalist historiography, where the emphasis of the historian is on the role of indigenous missionaries. We consider those people to be the unsung heroes of the gospel, the catechist, the local church teacher, the unpaid agent, and sometimes even the traditional rulers who out of their own volition invited the missionaries to come to their villages to set up mission schools and churches. Sometimes some of these names are not mentioned. And these are the people, because we consider them to be the missionaries because they were the people who traveled to the interiors of the villages to ensure that the gospel goes round. Now, when Tim approached me and I said to him, we belong to two different conflicting traditions of history. What makes you think that I'm the best person to perform this assignment? And they challenged me. He said, Doc, you taught me one thing. That variety is the beauty of academics. Why don't you take up this thing, read this book, make your own intervention, make your constructive criticism as you used to do, so that in the end, this book will come out stronger and better. Beyond that, he said to me, Doc, remember you will be the wife to my PhD. Much as you were not my direct supervisor, but you did much of the work. And so I do not consider anybody to be more qualified than you to do this assignment for you. And I said, you will. And I said to him that by the grace of God, I'm going to come. And I said, send me a copy of the book, let me read. So that I'll see, maybe just one or two things that I'm going to talk when I come. And he did. Ladies and gentlemen, when I read that book, it was amazing. In that book, I saw a different Timothy. In that book, I saw a perfect and intelligent combination of these two seeming conflicting traditions of historiography. Timothy was able to give the role of the foreign missionaries as well as the role of those unsung agents in one book. It is rare to do as a historian. That is what Professor Awka will call ecumenical dimension of doing church history. It is not an easy task. And I said to myself, I have won a combat today, so there is no reason why I should not do it. And so that's why I'm here. So ladies and gentlemen, that's how I'm inviting you to join me in a review of Timothy Agbo's Redifined Identity, the missionary interplay of Bible translation and Igbo culture, 1857 to 2017. My name is NWADIALOR, and by the grace of God, I'm the Associate Dean Faculty of Arts in University of Awka. The question of Igbo identity is one that has occupied the minds of the Igbo people, especially since the end of the era of slave trade, beginning of the missionary and colonial era, and the emergence of Igbo nationalist consciousness. This is particularly so because the people who are not self-conscious and who cannot define where they stand culturally from a human point of view cannot really and concretely take control of their fate and future in the social process. A lot of identity creates cultural development, leaving the people with fragmented systems, a vague sense of right or wrong, a lack of direction and imprisonment in immediacy and selfishness. This weakens the people's ability to work together and build a better society. There is probably no doubt that looked at in terms of the total scale of Igbo history, missionary enterprise will be discussed in terms of the degree of changes which it induced in the life and culture of the people and hence their identity. It is an event of far-reaching importance because the issue of continuity and change of Igbo identity under the influence of the Christian missionaries is one that has interested many scholars of Igbo society, who have debated with great skill the explanation for the relative ease or otherwise with which the Igbo embrace or were made to embrace new fashions. However, if a new religion has assumed a major significance in the lives of the people, then it is very necessary to assess the nature of its activities and progress in order to establish the genuineness of its predominance and to see how far it has allowed itself or otherwise to fulfill the requirements which the people demand of their religion. It is definitely in this direction that Venerable Dr. Timothy Agbo ventured into an academic research enterprise that produced this 345-page masterpiece that spread across 7 chapters and encapsulated in the title Redifined Identity, Missionary Interplay of Bible Translation and Igbo Culture, 1857 to 2017. This author has presented a unique catalogue of Igbo church historiography. You will agree with me that the science of church history in Igbo land, and of course Africa generally, is rather uncertain, fluid, and in the process of transition. The historiography is marked with variations as regards opinions and presentations from various categories of historians, with each category betraying a particular bias. Some present Igbo church history as God's intervention to redeem Igbo people from the cycle of Satan through the agency of the European missionaries, who sacrificed the comfort of their countries to preach Christianity and civilization to the united Igbo people. This tradition of history is called missionary historiography, like I said before, which this author captured in the submission of Professor Awka, that the Igbo gods were embattled by the presence of a new religion. Professor Ven.Dr. went further to say that the Igbo gods were not only embattled by the presence of a new religion, but we had a retreat. Professor Ayandele went further to say that not just that they were embattled, not just that there was a retreat, but pagandom was defeated. Various images drawn especially from the field of warfare have been employed by writers and scholars of different intellectual hues to depict the unprecedented collapse of pagandom and the displacement of Igbo gods by Christianity and Westernism. Now, that is one of the emphases of this book. Now, these missionary historiographers, look at how they presented the encounter of Igbo people with Christianity. Professor Awka was one of the foremost writers of Igbo church history, and he said, he wrote a book entitled The Embattled Gods, in which case that the message was that when Christianity came, the Igbo people encountered Christianity, the Igbo gods became embattled. They were struggling for survival. Now, Ven.Dr. went further to say that it is not just about struggling for survival. It is not just about being embattled. He wrote his own book and called it The Gods in Retreat. He said that these gods were actually embattled, and at the end of the day, when they saw that defeat was imminent, they had to retreat. Now, Professor Ayandele went further to say that not just that these gods had to retreat, but he described Igbo society as pagandom. I said that the war of pagandom collapsed Jericho-wise, and the Igbo gods were defeated. He called his book The Defeat of Pagandom. Now, this author raised a question here. The question is, if there is anything that is called pagandom, and if there is anything, or there are anything that is called Igbo gods, were they really defeated? Given the kind of things that we see in contemporary Christian practice in Igbo land, were those gods actually defeated? What we are doing today, is it really a new thing? Or just a new way of doing our own thing? That is one of the things, of course, my Lord Bishop said, don't tell them everything. Just, I should tell you a little bit so that you have the appetite to buy the book. Alright, so when you read the book, you see that the author of the book also provided an answer to these questions. Okay. Now, however, it is to be noted that just after a religious conversion, there is in reality a considerable measure of continuity between the totality of the new religious belief and the old. What this means is that the colonization of Igbo consciousness itself was never complete, even among the Western educated black elite. In this book, Dr. Agbo has shown that the era of missions, in which Christianity in Igbo land was seen as a white man's religion, that has come to displace defeated pagandom of Igbo people, which needed constant care from outside, which fabricated theology and liturgy, is over. The author explains this by pointing to one of the most powerful extra-doctrinal techniques adopted in practically every Christian mission, which is Western education. Mission education, according to Joku, was a loaded mix: religious, cultural, and secular knowledge, principally aimed at comprehensive conversion of the people, religiously, culturally, and socially. Most of the schools which existed in Igbo land in the 19th century were run by missionaries. Many of them were bilinguals. And so they were forced by the logic or exigencies of the mission field to turn to the study of Igbo language as a proper vehicle for conveying the gospel, which in turn opened the new world of cultures, preserved them from extinction, and that became the free route for the Igbo national consciousness and the rediscovery of Igbo identity. Translation of the Bible into Igbo language did not only facilitate the spread and internalization of Christian principles and morality in Igbo land, but it further introduced new aspects of Igbo Christianity by buttressing certain elements in Igbo religious experience, which enlightenment in quotes had forced the white missionaries to abandon. For instance, the Igbo saw that there is biblical support for revelation phenomena such as dreams and visions and prophetic utterances. Now, that is one of the things that this book is talking about: Bible translation. Of course, when the missionaries came, one of the good things that they did for us as a people, as Africans, as Igbo people, is study our language and translate the Bible into our language. Now, when this Bible was translated into Igbo language, these people, we the Igbo people, now have to read the Bible in our own language, and then we have to understand certain things that actually some overzealous white missionaries tried to abandon. Now, I do say that as Igbo people and as Africans, most times we see religion as a problem-solving activity. Most people go to church not necessarily because they want to worship God, but because they are looking up to God as what God will do for them before they leave that church premises. We see religion as a problem-solving activity. I do not blame anybody for that, because that is our traditional background. Now, before Christianity came, we used our traditional religion to solve some of our problems, socially, religiously, and so on. For instance, let's take healing, for example. If somebody was sick in Igbo land, the Igbo approach to healing is holistic. First of all, there will be some kind of spiritual diagnosis, whereby the sick person will be taken to either maybe a seer or a prophet or something, and then the person will diagnose what actually caused that problem. It could be that the person has violated the morality of the ancestors, or maybe a witch is after your life or something like that. And then when they discover what the problem is and solve the problem spiritually, that is when they can now administer medicine to the person so that the healing process will be more effective. That is the Igbo setting. Now, when the white missionaries came, they saw some of these things and they condemned them. As far as I'm concerned, I feel that they were not patient enough to understand our worldview and see whether there could be some kind of foundation for Christianity. They didn't do that. They didn't have that patience. They condemned all of these things as belonging to the citadel of Satan, and therefore you should not come into Christian practice. We agreed with them. We followed them to the church. Now, there was a crisis. Because when somebody is now sick, because the kind of Christianity that they introduced to us, they don't actually take cognizance of this kind of thing, this spiritual dimension of our life, especially in terms of healing. Now, if somebody becomes sick, they build hospitals for us to take it to the hospital. And of course, you agree with me that there are some ailments that sometimes when you take to the hospital or the lab, they might not find anything immediately. They might tell you that there is nothing wrong with this person, whether this person is dying. That is where our traditional belief now come in. And then sometimes you see a Christian seeing himself in that kind of situation, going to the native doctor, patronize the native doctor. So at least you need to save your life. And now these people, they started mocking us that we are practicing what we call syncretism. In a joker, in a more. You have one of your legs in Christianity and one of your legs in traditional religion. And then it was like a crisis situation for us. And then in order to solve that problem, you know what Africans and Igbo people started doing? We started thinking of a way of bringing some of these our traditional practices into Christianity. And that is why you see healing ministry everywhere. And that's why you see that all those so-called prophets, if you go to their churches, from Monday to Monday, from Sunday to Sunday, the churches are free to be praying. Some of those prophets are not fantastic preachers. I know a lot of them who cannot speak English. But their churches are free to be praying. People are going, they're not interested in what you are saying in terms of preaching, morality, and all of that. That's not their interest. Their interest is that they want those prophetic utterances and they want healing from you. So you see how African people now cleverly developed their own kind of Christianity that is called African Christianity. That is one of the things that the Reverend Timothy is talking in this book. Okay. Okay, so as the missionaries sowed the seed of the gospel, the Igbo people appropriated it from a primal charismatic worldview and read the translated scripture from that hermeneutic. Translation of the scriptures exposed the underbelly of missionary enterprise and gave the Igbo unprecedented access to the knowledge bank of the West, stored in these scripts and languages, eventually translated into ability for the Igbo to revisit and rearticulate their own hitherto denigrated cultural genius. What inevitably followed was an unquenchable appetite for the regeneration of Igbo primal identity. For instance, Igbo names became acceptable as being good enough for baptism. Now, you will agree with me that when the white missionaries came to us, at the point of baptism, they always encourage our people to adopt English names, as if Igbo names are not good enough for baptism. And then our people were doing that. Now, when the Bible was now translated, and then our people read the Bible, and then they saw that it was English people who actually brought Christianity to land, especially Anglicanism in the land. It was English people. But they now saw that these English people, of course, Christianity did not start in England. Much as it is difficult to trace the origin of Christianity, maybe that's not what we're doing today. But Christianity did not start in England. Let's just say that Christianity started in Israel. Now, why is it that these English people did not change their own name to Hebrew names? Why did they adopt Hebrew names? And then you brought Christianity to us and they are encouraging us to adopt English names, leaving our own native names and see they are not good enough about it. Our people saw this and there were reactions here and there. Some people started changing their names. I want to believe that it was in that direction that our own Benjamin Azikiwe changed his name to Nnamdi Azikiwe. Francis Ijam changed his name to Akano Ijam. And so many people like that. There were reactions here and there. Those who know me very well, especially my students, will know that if I encounter you for the first time and I have cause to ask you your name, if you tell me any foreign name, I look at you as an African, especially as a Igbo person. If you tell me any foreign name, my response is always, Onimere Ezigwafa. I always ask you, Onimere Ezigwafa. You see, sometime last year, I took my son, for baptism. chaplain in the person. And then, of course, traditionally, the chaplain asks to name the child. And I said, his name is Chinwalumo. Chaplain, listen, can I already get what for you? See how very check from not necessary. And then my wife quickly jumped out to say, his English name is Arnold. And see actually we go check, let us look at these two names. Arnold means a strong man, right? Now in which case we're not saying that I am strong enough, I can fight for myself. Then Chinwalumo, I don't have strength, let God fight for me. Now present these two names to God. Which one do you think you have to choose? And then Captain said, Chinwalumo baptized me. So you see, so that is that. I want to believe that sometimes it appears that Yoruba people are ahead of us in this direction. You have to see an educated Yoruba man getting English name. But for me, I will go. We should go past Ajo, about 21st Solar, Bola Tinubu, Wole Soyinka, and the rest of them. It is only when you come to this part of the world that you see somebody getting this Johnson, Jim Ike, Zubi Michael. So, that is one of the things that Dr. Agbo is talking about in terms of names. So when we read the translated Bible, we now saw that the Igbo names are actually good enough for baptism. Okay. Igbo musical instruments were now incorporated into gospel band. That's another good aspect of one of the things that this book is talking about. Of course, when these white missionaries, I'm not trying to condemn them. Please understand my own bias as a historian. I am a nationalist historian. And so that's why I'm talking in that way. And I want to come back to this, so I have no right to okay. So, now when these white missionaries came, they saw some of our local musical instruments. Like the one we call Ijaka, Agbo, and stuff like that. They said, oh, these are instruments for praising the devil, and they shouldn't come into the church. They introduced us into hymn singing. They brought keyboard to us. They brought guitar and all of those things. You see, Igbo religious setting is a dancing setting. That is the truth. And that is why sometimes when you go to the church, you see that if the church is to last for 2 hours, somebody will sleep for 1 hour, 30 minutes. The person will only be awake when the music is playing. Our setting is a dancing setting. So it became so boring. And then when we saw what was happening, you see that right now, gradually some of those local instruments are coming into our church. We are Anglicans. I don't know how many of us who have encountered this evangelical group in Isoko that is called AAPS, Anglican Adam Preaching Society. My God, if you encounter these people, there could just be 3 of them, maybe a man and 2 women. They can host a crusade and keep 1,000 people dancing till they break. There is no guitar, there is no keyboard. Clapping of hands. If you see AAPS. When I was in Warri, I was worshiping at St. Peter's Anglican Church in Enugu. Any day they are now, if you want to have an occasion, maybe a crusade or something, and you want people to come to the church, just tell them that AAPS choir will be ministering, and the church will refuse to pray. We are in a dancing setting, and it should be so. We should use some of those local instruments to praise our God. God gave us those things to praise Him. And I don't see any reason why anybody should condemn those things. Alright. Igbo language became acceptable as a liturgical language and pulpit language. Now, of course, when these people came, you know that for communication to actually take place, you have to speak and somebody will have to understand what you are saying. Right? Now, if, for example, that this is an illiterate, maybe 90% of those who are here now cannot understand English. You see that I'm just wasting my time, maybe for 30 minutes or 1 hour. I remember one day, one of my senior colleagues who is also a Catholic priest had a celebration in Agbo, and then we went there. The Mass was celebrated in Latin, and the Mass lasted for like 1 hour. That 1 hour was a useless 1 hour for me. I don't understand it. What I was doing is that if I don't see people stand up, I will stand up. If I see people shaking hands, I will shake hands. I didn't get one thing from that. So why don't you preach to the people in language they will understand? You know the power of language. Now there is this film that we watch, especially during the Christmas period, the Passion of Christ. You know that movie has been translated into Igbo language. Emana Jesus now. Put that film here and see those old women in the villages, how they enjoy it. It makes them feel that what can we go blow by? That kind of a thing. So that we stop seeing Christianity as white man's religion. That is one of the ways of bringing Christianity to be our own. So I am happy that, of course, in our church today, there is provision for Igbo language. Now, some Igbo traditional practices and institutions that are not actually offensive to Christian morality, but were erroneously denigrated by some evangelical white missionaries, were recognized. Like I said before, when these people came, they were not patient enough to understudy our traditional system, and they started condemning everything. Now, one of the aspects of our culture that they condemn was title taking. I still want somebody to tell me that title taking is not like Christians should not take title. I still want somebody to convince me about it. Because I see title taking as something that qualifies you to be a stakeholder in your traditional politics. It gives you a voice in decision making in your village. If for example, that in my own village, I'm from Awka, like Delta State, we don't just take title because we have money. You take title because it is hereditary. If, for example, it is my turn as a Christian that I should go and be Awka, and then I tell myself, no, I'm a Christian, I shouldn't be there, I have denied my family that chance. The decision can be taken that no Anglican church should be in Awka again. It will affect me. I won't be there when they take that decision. Now, there was an experience I had to say, I'm a proud one. I was in my office one day with two of my friends, incidentally, two of them Anglican clergymen, and we were discussing. Another person walked in. He was wearing native clothes, senator like the one I'm wearing, but he was putting on a red cap. Incidentally, he was a Catholic priest. And I said, "Good afternoon, Father." So we greeted, I introduced him to my friends. And so after a while, he left. And then one of those clergymen asked me, "Did you say this person is a Reverend Father?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why is he dressed like that?" I said, "What is wrong with this person's dress?" He said, "He was wearing a red cap." What is the problem with red cap? So I was wondering why you are saying that this person, you don't like his the way he dressed because he's putting on a red cap. I said, if you don't ask me, I can say that by way of ordination, you as a clergyman, you are already a chief. Your village people should recognize you because you are a chief. If the church can look at you and find you worthy to be their representative, then that should be enough to make you a chief. They should invite you whenever they want to take critical decisions because you are a stakeholder in the society. And I said, red cap in apparel is associated with red cap. Bishop's call cap. What call? This young lady is wearing a red cap. Are we going to chase her away? So you see, but that is colonial mentality. That is one of the things that these people put in us. That Timothy Agbo is trying to remove from our heads. Okay. Now, the Igbo educated elite then realized that some of those overzealous white missionaries were actually vocal where the Bible was silent. And that was the discovery that ignited Igbo nationalist consciousness and they moved to discover Igbo identity. Now, a distinctive characteristic of this book, therefore, is that the author did not merely tell the story of the role of white missionaries in cross-cultural mission, in which case one might be in danger of assuming that the European initiative dominates the history of Christianity in Igbo land, and that the indigenous role has merely been one of passive receptivity. He rather did a study of the past and present experience of the people with the gospel, both during and at the end of the missionary period, and exposed the extent to which Christian evangelism was a joint Igbo-European undertaking, in which the Igbo indigenous missionaries often held the dominant role. This book has triumphantly recalled from mere oblivion the achievements and initiatives in Igbo land. The book is concerned with unsung native agents, why cultural revivalism is a predominant motive of its historiography. The book notifies that a respect for tradition and the restoration of Igbo identity then meant much for the first generation Igbo Christians. It unveils a stronger attachment to Igbo culture are more self-assured and sophisticated, they did not consider that this implies a church. The book, however, noted with regret that the tempo with which the pioneer educated Igbo Christians pursued the cause of cultural revival and Igbo identity regeneration was not sustained by the next generation of Igbo Christians. According to the findings of this book, there is a glaring decline in the use of Igbo language in contemporary Igbo religious expression, even within the Igbo socio-cultural locale. That is so painful. You see, it is common these days for us to see Igbo, let me not call them children, adults who cannot speak Igbo. It is disheartening. And that is why I like one of the policies in my university today. Once you register as an undergraduate student of that university, NWADIALOR University, you must pass Igbo 2 times before you graduate. When we go, much as we structure the thing in such a way that I will be Igbo for non-Igbo, then we'll have Igbo for Igbo people. Come and see mass failure, especially on the side of Igbo people. Somebody called me last year, a family friend, of course, one woman from Lagos. And she said, you see, Raphael, my son, is supposed to graduate this year. And he has been writing it for the past 4 years. And he has been failing it. He did so wonderfully well in other courses, but this Igbo, who can market the bag, I'm ready to pay anything. I said, Mommy, I'm so disappointed. You are from Anambra. Your husband is from Anambra. The 2 of you are living together, training your children together. For the past 4 years, Rab has been in Awka and cannot speak Igbo, cannot pass. Shame. I don't have a solution to that. So the only solution is for him to go and sit down and read, understand Igbo and pass. So you can imagine the level that we have reached. That somebody is now asking to write so that his Igbo son can pass. He said, I gave birth to these children in Lagos. I said, I was born at Learning in University. But I can speak about dialect perfectly, even more than those who already do it. So I don't see any reason why the children should not speak it. But that's one of the things that we are seeing now. That's one of the things that the author has actually pointed out in this book. This is not only a loss of original intent of the first generation Igbo Christians, but it is also a harmful undoing to the cultural identity consciousness. In the global expansion of Christian mission, inadvertently, Igbo language, the English language and the English Bible still enjoy wider patronage over the native language and translated Bible, even after more than 1.5 centuries of existence of Christianity in Igbo land. Before this section of this occasion, when the service was going on, I enjoyed the fact that most of the hymns we sang most of the hymns in Igbo. I was looking around and I saw how they're struggling to use Igbo to praise God. Why should it be so even in this time? After more than 1.5 centuries of existence of Christianity in Igbo. Remember when this Bible was written? Up till now we are still struggling. So the author has pointed out that is something that we need to address. Now, the author traced this ugly development to some unanticipated outcome of missionary enterprise in Igbo land, one of which was the missionary system of Western education. The introduction of formal education by the Christian mission was determined by local circumstances rather than by a clearly defined policy. The missionaries severally regarded themselves as eventually preachers rather than teachers. But in the most situation where the populace was illiterate, it was realized that the school system would be, in essence, the most important mechanism for detaching the young from their community setting, from the whole complex of conventions and beliefs in which they have been brought up. So in the process of changing the fundamental basis of the Igbo society by the missionaries, the school played an important part. It was an instrument of mobilizing support for Christianity, and by the same token, withdrawing support from the whole social order. This role was more crucial because those recruited for Christianity through the school were by and large children, not fully inducted into the culture and law of the society. The result was that they brought to Christianity fewer trappings of the indigenous culture than would have been the case if most of the early converts were elders who have become the embodiment of tradition of their fathers. In the context of Igbo culture, therefore, conversion to Christianity was not just a question of new ideologies for the old. It also involved exchanging one form of social life for the other. And so, unaware of the many implications of missionary propaganda, the various Igbo groups were eager at the outset to accept the new religion and the new identity it confers on its adherents. Another outcome of the missionary enterprise, which this book has pointed out to have served as an instrument of social change in Igbo land, was urbanization. Urbanization was unknown in pre-Christian Igbo land. The people lived in villages, village groups and clans. There was also hardly anything like living in anonymity or living an individual existence to the extent that it's possible today in urban centers. But in urban conditions of existence, one is released from all these intricate and intimate links, which tend to hinder the development of rugged individualism. It was by introducing these conditions that urbanization proved such a potent instrument of social identity change in Igbo land. In these urban centers, Igbo elements found themselves compelled to adopt styles of life quite different from what they came with from the villages. The Igbo spirit of emulation was largely responsible for the rapid change in Igbo identity in missionary era. This is what Professor Ozigbo described as the strange Igbo craze for the exotic. According to him, the Igbo are notorious for hankering after seductive cultural traits of other people, even when such traits appear unintelligent. They love to speak in foreign tongues. They fall for models in dress and ornamentation from Europe and America. An Igbo youth will give anything for a shirt, singlet, gown, or cap, blessing with such exotic titles like London, New York, California, and so on. He prefers the European cuisine to his African food. That's another interesting thing. You see, let me share another experience with you. When I married my wife, the first year that we lived together, during the Christmas. Incidentally, that year, Christmas was on a Sunday. And so on a Saturday preceding the Christmas, I gave her money to go to the market, right, to buy things that we were going to eat the following day. And I was specific. And I said, buy fresh fish and buy enough yam so that tomorrow you prepare pounded yam so we can eat. And prepare it so that it will be big enough because I know that my friends will come so we can serve me. And then after saying that, she was looking at me like, you have not finished, you have not told me the real message. And I started going now. And she said, on I am a simply Christmas. Where's you can't see this year on the salad. So you see the mentality that we already see. I said, what is the relationship between Christ and rice? And then, what is the problem between pounded yam and Christianity? Here goes to the whole of pounded yam. I'm running Christmas. So you see that kind of mentality, and that's what a number of us are doing today. So that when you walk into a Christian family on a Sunday and they are not eating right, it will be like, yo, to Awka. I'm not about to be a teacher. Okay. Now, an Igbo person can proudly wear Hausa cap and Yoruba abada, even when the Hausa or Yoruba will have nothing to do with Igbo traditional wrapper or cap. I attended a traditional marriage somewhere in Anambra. And then the celebrant, when he came out, was wearing this very expensive Yoruba abada and wearing Hausa cap. Somebody celebrating the good tradition in Igbo land. He dressed like Yoruba and Hausa. And I was wondering, what is wrong with our people? How can you be celebrating traditional marriage in Umuchu and you are dressing like a Yoruba man or our Hausa man in Umuchu, doing tradition? So that is one of the things that we see today in Igbo land. And curiously, Igbo people take to these things as prestige symbols. Sometimes people do it to show that we have arrived or that we have prestige or something, to distinguish yourself. I don't know why why we think in that direction. Okay. It is therefore on the basis of the above observations that the author of this book is making a clarion call. It is therefore on the basis of the above observation that the author of this book is making a clarion call for Igbo-nizing Christianity with regard to evaluating the degree to which the gospel has been shared with commitment and a dialogue with the culture of the people, especially their language. When he say Igbo-nizing Christianity, I know people will be wondering, how do we Igbo-nize Christianity? Like I said before, that I have not come here to begin to talk about the origin of Christianity. But let's just assume that Christianity started in Israel. Now, when Christianity started in Israel, when Christianity got to Roman Empire, it was Romanized. When Christianity got to England, it was Anglicized. When Christianity got to Germany, it was Germanized. Now that Christianity is in Igbo land, why can't Christianity be Igbo-nized? That is what this author is talking about. The book is therefore a form of Igbo Renaissance, particularly of Igbo language and identity consciousness, especially its cultural locale. The book insists that in the face of the undue influence from foreign languages and culture, Igbo language is not second class to any other, and is good enough for world missionary outreach. The book recommends that the contemporary church should therefore rediscover the primal motive of Igbo Bible translation and employ its values as their contribution for the preservation of Igbo language, and especially for more effective Christian missionary expansion in Igbo land. Meanwhile, this call does not mean a summon to exhume all our past. Indeed, much of our past are dead and should be allowed to rest for eternity. More so, a new religion has come into being and makes it a sin for the revival of certain elements here at the practice. But I dare to say that the thrust of the message of this book is that there should be an Igbo way of being a Christian and a Christian way of being an Igbo man. However, my good friend Timothy, I want to disagree with you on one point. Yes, I want to disagree with you on the point of tracing the advent of Christianity in Igbo land. You seem to have situated the origin of Christianity in Igbo land on July 27, 1857, at Onitsha, when the first formal church service was conducted. But my own take is that Igbo had already encountered Christianity long before the 1857 experience. Recall that in the three major Niger expeditions of the CMS of 1841, 1854, and 1857, Agbo, which is an Igbo-speaking community in the present-day Delta State, was their major anchor point. In 1841, for instance, the missionaries were welcomed by Uyo Sai of Agbo Kingdom, who appreciated their mission and gave them the opportunity to preach to his people. Simon Jonas, who was an Igbo agent of the mission from Sierra Leone, spent 3 weeks in Agbo, where he gathered enough Igbo converts who were eager to listen to him on a daily basis, before the disaster that took place that year, which ended the expedition abruptly. There was a repeat attempt in 1854 when quinine was discovered by Dr. William Becky. And the CMS missionaries also anchored in Agbo before proceeding to Yena and Mokoja. And this time around, Simon Jonas spent 3 months in Agbo tending his converts. Then in 1857 expedition, the missionaries relocated from Agbo to Onitsha. The author appears to have agreed with some historians who claim that Agbo people rejected the gospel. If you're very familiar with, we just celebrated CMS anniversary. There was one year that I attended that celebration, and the guest speaker said something about Andi Agbo Jerusalem, and I was so mad. Let's again Andi Agbo Jerusalem. He said the Agbo people rejected because hence the missionaries left Agbo for it. But the question is, why would Agbo people accept the gospel in 1841 and 1854 only to reject it in 1857? The then Obi of Agbo, who they said rejected the gospel on behalf of his people, did not live forever. So why didn't the missionaries go back to Agbo when the man died? Recall that the so-called celebrated Onitsha also had problems with the CMS missionaries in 1867, which resulted to the burning of the mission houses and the destruction of properties, such that the missionaries left Onitsha for Asaba. It is expected that since the missionaries came back to Onitsha when the crisis was over, They should have also extended that gesture to Agbo when the Obi died. It is to be noted that Obi Ajayi for Agbo was just being a nationalist, like many other traditional rulers in various parts of Africa who resisted the European attacking to exploit them. And since it was difficult then to distinguish between the missionaries and other categories of Europeans, opposition to other Europeans sometimes translated to opposition to the missionaries. It was so in the case of Jaga of Obo. It was so in the case of Nana of Ijeki. It was so in the case of Kosovo of Lagos. So what is special about that? From the record, therefore, the missionaries left Agbo for return on two major counts. First was that the topography of Agbo made it almost impossible for them to operate from there as their headquarters. Of course, if you know Agbo very well, you know that Agbo is very close to Canada. In 2012, when there was this great flood, I doubt if there was any building in Agbo that flood did not enter. And of course, this book came in July 1857. Probably there was a great flood that year. You don't expect white people to stay in that place. So that was one of the reasons they left. Not that Agbo was wrong. Don't mind me, incidentally I'm from that side. Okay. And secondly, the missionaries saw the need to move with the British traders who had decided to make Onitsha their headquarters for easy access to the Niger River. It is therefore better to say that Christianity in Igbo land started in Agbo in 1841, but the first permanent Christian mission was built in Onitsha in 1857. That is my position. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly recommend that this book is a must read by every Igbo Christian and every lover of African Christian. My good friend Tim, I say congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Anglican Diocese of Enugu. Congratulations to the Church of Nigeria Anglican Community. Congratulations to Igbo Christian. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening.
One more time, just let us appreciate this leaders for Soul of Mine. We are here together and God of love. My Lord Bishop, sir, you shall be seated, please. Great ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I think the patience working.
The book is concerned with unsung native agents. Why cultural revivalism is a predominant motive of its historiography. The book notifies that a respect for tradition and the restoration of Igbo identity then meant much for the first generation Igbo Christians. It unveils a stronger attachment to Igbo culture, and more self-assured and sophisticated. They did not consider that this implies a breach in the church. The book, however, noted with regret that the tempo with which the pioneer educated Igbo Christians pursued the cause of cultural revival and Igbo identity regeneration was not sustained by the next generation Igbo Christians. According to the findings of this book, there is a glaring decline in the use of Igbo language in contemporary Igbo religious expression, even within the Igbo socio-cultural locale. That is so painful. You see, it is common these days for us to see Igbo, let me not call them children, adults who cannot speak Igbo. It is disheartening. And that is why I like one of the policies in my university today. Once you register as an undergraduate student of that university, NWADIALOR University, you must pass Igbo 2 times before you graduate. Whenever you go Igbo. Much as we structure the thing in such a way that I will be Igbo for non-Igbo, then we'll have Igbo for Igbo people. Come and see mass failure, especially on the side of Igbo. Somebody called me last year, a family friend, of course, one woman from Lagos. And she said, you see, Raphael, my son, is supposed to graduate this year. And he has been writing Igbo for the past 4 years. And he has been failing it. He did so wonderfully well in other courses, but this Igbo, who can market the bag, I'm ready to pay anything. And I said, Mommy, I'm so disappointed. You are from Anambra. Your husband is from Anambra. The 2 of you are living together, training your children together. For the past 4 years, Rab has been in Awka and cannot speak Igbo, cannot pass. Shame. I don't have a solution to that. So the only solution is for him to go and sit down and read, understand the and pass it. So you can imagine the level that we have reached. That somebody is now asking to write so that his Igbo song can pass. He said, I gave birth to these children in Lagos. I said, I was born at Learning University. But I can speak about dialect perfect, even more than those who are in the village. So I don't see any reason why your children should not speak it. But that's one of the things that we are seeing now. That's one of the things that the author has actually pointed out in this book. This is not only a loss of original intent of the first generation Igbo Christians, but it is also a harmful undoing to the cultural identity consciousness. In the global expansion of Christian mission, inadvertently, Igbo language, the English language and English Bible still enjoy wider patronage over the native language and translated Bible, even after more than 1.5 centuries of existence of Christianity in the world. Before this section of this occasion, when the service was going on, I enjoyed the fact that most of the hymns we sang most of the things in Igbo. I was looking around and I saw how people were struggling to use Igbo to praise God. And it's everybody will start jumping. Why should it be so even in this time? After more than 1.5 centuries of existence of Christianity in Igbo land. Remember when this Bible was translated? Up till now we are still struggling. So the author has pointed out that is something that we need to address. Now, the author traced this ugly development to some unanticipated outcome of missionary enterprise in Igbo land. One of which was the missionary system of Western education. The introduction of formal education by the Christian mission was determined by local circumstances rather than by a clearly defined policy. The missionaries severally regarded themselves as eventually preachers rather than teachers. But in the Igbo situation where the populace was illiterate, it was realized that the school system would be in essence the most important mechanism for detaching the young from their community setting, from the whole complex of conventions and beliefs in which they have been brought up. So in the process of changing the fundamental basis of Igbo society by the missionaries, the school played an important part. It was an instrument of mobilizing support for Christianity, and by the same token, withdrawing support from the old social order. This role was more crucial because those recruited for Christianity through the school were by and large children, not fully inducted into the culture and lore of the society. The result was that they brought to Christianity fewer trappings of the indigenous culture than would have been the case if most of the early converts were elders who had become the embodiment of tradition of their parents. In the context of Igbo culture, therefore, conversion to Christianity was not just a question of new ideologies for the whole. It also involved extending one form of social life for the other. And so, unaware of the many implications of missionary propaganda, the various Igbo groups were eager at the outset to accept the new religion and the new identity it confers on its adherents. Another outcome of the missionary enterprise, which this book has pointed out to have served as an instrument of social change in Igbo land, was urbanization. Urbanization was unknown in pre-Christian Igbo land. The people lived in villages, village groups and clans. There was also hardly anything like living in anonymity or living an individual existence to the extent that it's possible today in urban centers. But in urban conditions of existence, one is released from all these intricate and intimate links, which tend to hinder the development of rugged individualism. It was by introducing these conditions that urbanization proved such a potent instrument of social identity change in Igbo land. In these urban centers, Igbo elements found themselves compelled to adopt styles of life quite different from what they came with from the villages. The Igbo spirit of emulation was largely responsible for the rapid change in Igbo identity in missionary era. This is what Professor Zibo described as the strange Igbo craze for the exotic. According to him, The Igbo are notorious for hankering after seductive cultural traits of other people, even when such traits appear unintelligible. They love to speak in foreign tongues. They fall for models in dress and ornamentation from Europe and America. An Igbo youth will give anything for a shirt, singlet, gown, or cap, blessing with such exotic titles like London, New York, California, and so on. He prefers the European cuisine to his African food. That's another interesting thing. You see, let me share another experience with you. When I married my wife, the first year that we lived together, during the Christmas. Incidentally, that year, the Christmas was on a Sunday. And so on a Saturday preceding the Christmas, I gave her money to go to the market, right, to buy things that we were going to eat the following day. And I was specific. And I said, buy fresh fish and buy enough yam so that tomorrow you prepare pounded yam so we can eat. And prepare it so that it will be big enough because I know that my friends will come so and serve you. And then after saying that, she was looking at me like, you have not finished, you have not told me the real message. And I said, I start going now. And she said, on I am a Sydney Christmas. Where's you can't see this year on the salad. So you see the mentality that we already see. I said, what is the relationship between Christ and rice? And then what is the problem between pounded yam and Christianity? Here goes to hold up pounded yam and run the Christmas. So you see that kind of mentality, and that's what the number of us are doing today. So that when you walk into a Christian family on a Sunday and they are not eating right, it will be like Awka. I'm not remember you able to be a teacher. Okay. Now, an Igbo person can proudly wear Hausa cap and Yoruba abada, even when the Hausa or Yoruba will have nothing to do with Igbo traditional wrapper or cap. I attended a traditional marriage somewhere in Anambra. And then the celebrant, when he came out, was wearing this very expensive Yoruba abada and wearing Hausa cap. Somebody celebrating Igbo tradition in Igbo land. He dressed like Yoruba and Hausa. And I was wondering, what is wrong with our people? How can you be celebrating traditional marriage in Umuchu and you are dressing like a Yoruba man or an Hausa man in Umuchu, doing tradition? So that is one of the things that we see today in Igbo land. And curiously, Igbo people take to these things as prestige symbol. Sometimes people do it to show that we have arrived or that we have prestige or something to distinguish yourself. I don't know why we think in that direction. Okay. It is therefore on the basis of the above observations that the author of this book is making a clarion call. It is therefore on the basis of the above observation that the author of this book is making a clarion call for Igbo-nizing Christianity with regard to evaluating the degree to which the gospel has been shared with commitment and in dialogue with the culture of the people, especially their language. When he said Igbo-nizing Christianity, I know people will be wondering, how do we Igbo-nize Christianity? Like I said before, that I have not come here to begin to talk about the origin of Christianity. But let's just assume that Christianity started in Israel. Now, when Christianity started in Israel, when Christianity got to Roman Empire, it was Romanized. When Christianity got to England, it was Anglicized. When Christianity got to Germany, it was Germanized. Now that Christianity is in Igbo land, why can't Christianity be Igbo-nized? That is what this author is talking about. The book is therefore a form of Igbo renaissance, particularly of Igbo language and identity consciousness, especially the sociocultural location. The book insists that in the face of the undue influence from foreign languages and culture, Igbo language is not second class to any other, and is good enough for world missionary outreach. The book recommends that the contemporary church should therefore rediscover the primal motive of Igbo Bible translation and employ its values as their contribution for the preservation of Igbo language, and especially for more effective Christian missionary expansion in Igbo land. Meanwhile, this call does not mean a summon to exhume all our past. Indeed, much of our past are dead and should be allowed to rest for eternity. More so, a new religion has come into being and makes it a sin for the revival of certain elements here that we practice. But I dare to say that the thrust of the message of this book is that there should be an Igbo way of being a Christian and a Christian way of being an Igbo man. However, my good friend Timothy, I want to disagree with you on that. Yes, I want to disagree with you on the point of tracing the advent of Christianity in Igbo land. You seem to have situated the origin of Christianity in Igbo land on July 27, 1857, at Onitsha, when the first formal church service was conducted. But my own take is that Igbo had already encountered Christianity long before the 1857 experience. Recall that in the three major Niger expeditions of the CMS of 1841, 1854, and 1857, Agbo, which is an Igbo-speaking community in the present-day Delta State, was their major anchor point. In 1841, for instance, the missionaries were welcomed by Uvio Sai of Agbo Kingdom, who appreciated their mission and gave them the opportunity to preach to his people. Simon Jonas, who was an Igbo agent of the mission from Sierra Leone, spent 3 weeks in Agbo, where he gathered enough Igbo converts who were eager to listen to him on a daily basis, before the disaster that took place that year, which ended the expedition abruptly. There was a repeat attempt in 1854 when quinine was discovered by Dr. William Beck. And the CMS missionaries also anchored in Agbo before proceeding to Ida and Mokoja. And this time around, Simon Jonas spent 3 months in Agbo tending his converts. Then in 1857 expedition, the missionaries relocated from Agbo to Onitsha. The author appears to have agreed with some historians who claim that Agbo people rejected the gospel. If you are very familiar with, we just celebrated CMS anniversary. There was one year that I attended that celebration and the guest speaker said something about Agbo Jerusalem, and I was so mad. He said the Agbo people rejected the gospel, hence the missionaries left Agbo for Onitsha. But the question is, why would Agbo people accept the gospel in 1841 and 1854 only to reject it in 1857? The then Obi of Agbo, who they said rejected the gospel on behalf of his people, did not live forever. So why didn't the missionaries go back to Agbo when the man died? Recall that the so-called celebrated Onitsha also had problems with the CMS missionaries in 1867, which resulted to the burning of the mission houses and the destruction of properties, such that the missionaries left Onitsha for Asaba. It is expected that since the missionaries came back to Onitsha when the crisis was over, they should have also extended that gesture to Agbo when the Obi died. It is to be noted that Obi Ajayi of Agbo was just being a nationalist, like many other traditional rulers in various parts of Africa, who resisted the Europeans that came to exploit them. And since it was difficult then to distinguish between the missionaries and other categories of Europeans, opposition to other Europeans sometimes translated to opposition to the missionaries. It was so in the case of Jaja Obobo. It was so in the case of Nana of Ichekiri. It was so in the case of Kosovo of Lagos. So what is special about that? From the record, therefore, the missionaries left Agbo for Onitsha on 2 major counts. First was that the topography of Agbo made it almost impossible for them to operate from there as their headquarters. Of course, if you know Agbo very well, you know that Agbo is very close to Nigeria. In 2012, when there was this great flood, I doubt if there was any building in Agbo that flood did not enter. And of course, this book came in July 1857. Probably there was a great flood that year. You don't expect white people to stay in Nigeria. So that was one of the reasons they left. Not that Agbo Jerusalem. Don't mind me, incidentally I'm from that side. Okay. So, and secondly, the missionaries saw the need to move with the British traders who had decided to make Onitsha their headquarters for easy access to the Niger River. It is therefore better to say that Christianity in Igbo land started in Agbo in 1841, but the first permanent Christian mission was built in Onitsha in 1857. That is my position. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly recommend that this book is a must read by every Igbo Christian and every lover of African Christian. My good friend Tim, I say congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Anglican Diocese of Enugu. Congratulations to the Church of Nigeria Anglican Community. Congratulations to Igbo Christian. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.